Hello, hello, and welcome back to another episode of the Chris Macpherson Show, your home of black and white opinions. No grey here across your sporting landscape. We're looking forward to bringing you another plethora of sporting opinions and views. Maybe even getting a few of them right might be nice for a change. We've got lots to talk about. We're going to talk about basketball, tennis, F1, athletics, some rugby league, and of course a bit of football. We've got some wonderful co-hosts and guests coming on this week, and we're going to dig in with them. Of course, if you want to stay up to date with us during the week, the best places to do that are on our TikTok, Instagram, and Facebook. You can find us at all of them at The Chris Mack Show. You can also, of course, follow us on our YouTube channel where you get this show every week, or Spotify to get your podcasts. But let's get it underway without any further ado. Let's welcome in our superstar panel that we've gone. Ben Dunn, JR Carter, welcome back. I feel like I should have trimmed my hair.
Bald is the new black.
You've done a drive-by again when I've arrived. What is this? Ben, week in, week out, I come on the show, and for the first time ever, I didn't get a drive-by last week, and here we are again.
We can't have you getting too comfortable, JR. And on top of that, noting the jersey that I'm wearing right now, what we're going to kick off this show talking about, I definitely can't have you too comfortable with the Queenslander. I needed to make we push the Victorians out because we don't want Origin. Let's talk about it, Ben. The Origin teams. Let's start with the Blues. What were your takeaways?
Mate, the only real takeaways I had are the front rowers that they've picked. Other than that, I'm sort of pretty happy with it. Max King getting a bit of a run, and Laurie Daly's justification for it with the fact that the guy turned up and made a tackle. It seems a little bit wishy-washy. I can completely understand that he's involved in the best team. Is he the best front rower? I don't know, but I don't think people like Terrell May really threw their best hat in the ring, particularly with his little Instagram live and showing the jersey in the bin and all that sort of stuff. And then Utakamano, I get Bellamy as an assistant coach, and he's probably helped with some of the selections, but has he been one of the four best New South Wales props? I don't think so. Particularly wasn't really against the Sharks, wasn't really the week before when he gave away penalties and went in possession and stuff like that. So, yeah, look, those are my two big question marks there. But other than that, I was pretty happy with the team.
Do you think in terms of that, have you got names? Obviously, Terrell May was one of those, but his maturity continues to shine through at every opportunity. The other one that I thought, again, I might have tried to find a spot for, but I'm not sure who you cut for him, is Pappenhausen. Whether he could have been electric off the bench, but that would have probably meant you let go of Connor Watson, who's been really good this year at the Roosters. So that's one of those ones that I'm okay with. I would have been okay either way. Similar probably with Pappenhausen. He's probably bracketed with Edwards and Watson. He could have filled either of those spots, but it's almost a toss of a coin. It's not like he was a standout in either of those spots.
Yeah, look, I don't really have an answer for who you'd pick in there. You'd probably pick like a back rower who could slot in and do a couple of sort of stints in the front row, I guess, and cover both positions. But look, that's why I'm not a selector, I suppose. And my NBA picks have proven that I don't really know what I'm talking about anything. So, look, I'm happy to turn up next week and keep watching, see what happens, and hopefully get proven wrong and we run over Queensland and 30-0.
Yeah, nice clean sweep would be wonderful. The one that does puzzle me is I don't understand, and again, I'm probably a bit biased here at the Raiders, how Hudson Young is not in the starting lineup. I feel he's been one of the best forwards in the NRL this season. Scores tries for absolute fun.
Mate, can't stop him.
But I have a feeling that Laurie Daly may actually use him through the middle a little bit, just a bit more free-ranging running, so we'll wait to see.
I think you have to, and he's a hard-running dude anyway, and he's certainly proven when he's been in that arena before that he's not afraid of the contact and to mix it up. So, yeah, I wouldn't have a problem. Like, even if they wanted to use him like Queensland have previously used Ruben Cotter. So it seems to sort of almost be a like for like.
Even use his kicking game. JR, let's take the other side of the coin. We'll do some drive-bys on the Queensland team. I know you're going to do some drive-bys of your own, because that seems like a positive thing to do before the started.
Look, it's just there's a lot of expected names in this lineup. Like Daly, Cherry Evans, Cameron Munster, even Val Holmes is getting up for for state duty, and you've got guys like Kurt Marn sitting just off the edge. But what is Kalyn Ponga doing back in this squad? Like he's been in exile for a couple of years. The Knights are nowhere this year. This is a Mitch Marsh situation all over again. What is going on?
Well, that's my question too, because he's looking completely disinterested for the Knights. Anytime it gets tough at all, he goes disappearing, and I don't know. It's hopefully they're thinking that he's going to get that Queensland pride once he puts the jersey on. But a dude from Perth that wants to play for the Kiwis, who knows?
Yeah, look, that's sort of where we're at, I think. And like, while we've got that like really good halves combo that we've had for a few years now, like in the tradition of like Queensland halves combos being almost dynasties, like where you had your Thurston and Lockyer, then you had your Munster like coming through, like those guys, like just being consistent there. But like, I'm just not sure about like what's getting built around there. Forward pack looking great. You got Tino and like big guys up front. As for Patrick Carrigan, not sure if he is the right pick at the moment, but we'll see.
I think the fair thing is with Tom Gilbert out, there's a bit of a hole there to be filled. Yeah. And we talked about this off air just quickly on that the back line before I get onto that piece. I think there's still some question marks over Robert Toyer. He seems a bit of a left field pick, Ben.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, absolute bolter. Well, like, where's he come from? Had anyone heard from him before this year or knew who he was? He's played, 5 or 6 games now. Hasn't exactly set the world on fire. I mean, he hasn't been terrible, but, yeah, it seems quite surprising.
Weaver, what's going on? That's in
Queensland, mate. We know that.
Look, we see that the Origin rules are getting like thrown around pretty left, right, and centre, like in terms of like what eligibility actually looks like. So,
look, he did. I'm a bit confused by it because I think he played for the Central Coast Roosters at one point, and then he ended up in Queensland. I think you've just got to be to Queensland on a holiday once to be eligible.
Maybe even read a postcard from there. Who knows?
And again, Jay, I'd love your thought on this as a Queenslander. Again, it might be my green fandom bleeding through. The biggest, baddest red-headed man in the world, Corey Horsburgh, has been, again, on fire for the Raiders. Like, again, don't get me wrong, I'm pumped to see Beau Fermor in there. He's been a star for the Titans the last couple of years. Trent Luero, been good for the Storm. He was a bit surprising for me. And even Finifawaki from the Dolphins, I just don't see how Horsburgh is not in the extended squad at least. Like, what's he done?
Look, I'm not sure. He just hasn't impressed like the Queensland board. Effectively, like that panel of selectors, like they're tedious. They usually have a reason behind what they're doing. Like, I'm curious to see what that reason for some of these players is, but we're not there.
Botawaker with his 11 runs on the weekend was more impressive, I guess.
Yeah,
I think I know the answer. They're looking for players with style. Sorry, Horsburgh, please don't kill me. That one's puzzling for me. Hopefully it's in the backside, Ben.
Yeah, I mean, probably good for New South Wales that he's not in there because I think he'd be one of those players that really got up. He seems to be a pretty emotional guy. So I think he'd do a lot of damage in a Queensland jersey. So I'm very happy he's not there.
And particularly the opener being at Suncorp, like that's like just Queenslander territory. Like you're at the Cauldron. It's just a big event game. And like he'd be the sort of player that would step up for that.
I agree. I think the other thing, Daly Cherry Evans, I think will become the oldest State of Origin player. We'll go past. It escapes me who he goes past, but
he'd have to go past Cam Smith for that award, wouldn't he?
Or Crump. Maybe Alfie Langer when he came back from England.
Yeah, that's also.
He will take that honour. The one that, again, you talked about it up there, Ben. I was surprised with him because Tom Dearden's been absolutely killing it. I'm nervous about when he comes off the bench against tired forwards. They play him through the middle, a bit like what they did with Michael Morgan a few years ago, both for Queensland and Australia.
Yeah, I think so too. And I was much happier seeing DCE in the side than I was like sort of seeing Dearden on the bench because DCE's been another one of those ones that was a bit of a questionable selection for me since he announced that he didn't want to sign with Manly. He's been playing in a dinner suit, doesn't want to get tackled, doesn't really play with any urgency. It must be a loyalty thing for picking him because, I don't really see how he would tick any boxes over Dearden.
I think for that piece with the DCE one, like he was someone that like took a while to get into that Queensland side. I think he's the kind of player that will step up in that environment. So while he's like checked out to all end at Manly at the moment, put an actual like proper maroon jersey on him, he will step up.
I like that proper maroon. Not the ones that have paid him like $1 million a year for the last decade. Okay.
Sea Eagles aren't real people.
No, that's true too.
Petro Civoniceva is the man that Daly Cherry Evans will.
That would make complete sense, actually.
Years and 74 days, the old 70 cents a litre. So well done to DCE. One thing that is hard to overcome and do in sport, we'll talk NBA a little bit later, Ben, is longevity. LeBron's done it in the NBA. It's an underrated quality at the level these guys compete at. But we'll wait and see how it all shapes up. Game one, we'll undoubtedly catch up probably with Matty Willoughby and Adam Martin in the lead up to that in the next couple of weeks. And wait and see what comes of it. While we're still going around the grounds, gents, Aussie sprinting is not necessarily something that's been at the forefront of things since Kathy Freeman. We've seen Gout come back. But the one I want to talk about at the moment is the very aptly named Rizzo, Brie Rizzo. It's a really, it's got a Happy Days sort of vibe to it. I think Ben Dunn, I don't know if some of our listeners are old enough, but she is in the Golden Grand Prix, which is a gold level meet, so just below the diamond level at the Athletics World Tour. She's beaten the Olympic silver medalist Sha'Carri Richardson to take a 100-metre title. It's been a long time since an Aussie's won a 100-metre at any major meet, so absolutely phenomenal. It's great as we build towards, it was in Tokyo, it's great as we build towards the World Championships, which will be there later this year. We know that we'll have Gout there. Also had a couple of others, Georgia Griffith and Rose Davies winning. Rose Davies a little bit close to home for the three of us, and Nova Castrian, so she won the 3,000 metres. So great to see some Aussie athletes building and hopefully becoming part of this golden generation as we head towards the Brisbane Olympics in 7 years, gents.
Yeah, absolutely. And look, I know that the 4x100 team has been doing some pretty good stuff as well. So it's good to see them step out of that sort of team environment and do really well individually. So like you said, hopefully it's a sign of bigger and better things to come.
Yeah. Gold double in Brisbane, Rizzo and Gout. What a time that would be in the 100.
Oh, sign me up. I'll be there 2032, dressed in a gold mankini.
Just sold me on not going hard.
Look, we can clip that, so we can, like, when we get to there, we can just make sure that we're committed to that. So
100%.
Well, JR, let's keep moving, talking about Aussie athletes. Let's go to the Test Championship, and the South Africans have made some waves because they've encouraged, in inverted commas, their cricketers to leave the IPL in late May, the 25th, they've set as the date. We're not enforcing it, but they've encouraged it. Is this a big deal? I mean, a lot of the Aussies haven't gone back anyway. Is it really going to impact the IPL finishes on the 3rd of June, World Test Championship starts the 11th of June?
Look, I think it might just be covering off like any training the Australians sort of have in mind. Like with most of our squad, like I think you were saying before off air that Josh Hazelwood's probably the only one that did go back over. With most of our guys like just committing to like not returning due to the tension over there, they're effectively in a train-on squad right now, like just getting ready for that particular match. Well, that series, I should say. So I think South Africa's just put the little pressure out there just to sort of cover off what Australia's up to.
Dunny, I love this in sport where they say, they're encouraged in inverted commas. It's like at work when they tell you that there's a non-mandatory, after work meeting. We know what it means, don't we?
Yeah, absolutely. It's recommended. Yeah. Look, hopefully they all stay safe and no one gets any catastrophic outcomes out of it. But yeah, I'd be staying away from India for sure.
I don't think it's on the default travel approved list right now, India or Pakistan, and certainly not holidaying in sunny Kashmir. Before we get out around the grounds and we go and talk some NBA shortly with you, Dunny, JR, the F1 circus continues to dominate. There's a lot of people talking about how jam-packed this calendar is. It's great for us because it means nearly every week we've got something to talk about, and this week it's Super Max.
Yes, Max is back. Max just going from qualifying, like took pole, and just covered everybody off the whole way through. The big stories of the weekend, McLaren just seemingly adopting Ferrari's approach to pit stop management and pitting Oscar straight into traffic, and Oscar getting very lucky with that safety car that actually occurred, where a couple of cars were just dropping off the grid, like just sitting on the side of the track, like no major crashes outside of that horrific crash we've seen from Yuki during quali, where like that was just shocking to watch. And he walked away. He also actually ran a great race himself. Like, I don't think enough is being said. Like, while Yuki's had his struggles in that Red Bull so far, coming from starting in the pit lane to finishing 10th, off the back of that crash with that car getting rebuilt the way it was, that's actually a really great effort from Yuki. So I think we're starting to maybe see him turn a corner in that car.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. I know that Andrea Stella was quoted, and I love a good quote, JR, just saying they were quite surprised by the pace. But my favourite quote from the weekend was from George Russell, who, after Oscar didn't put up enough of a fight to let Max pass, George Russell was quoted on the radio as saying, "Effing Piastri."
That entire incident with George Russell, he's had that Lewis Hamilton apprenticeship of just observing what's going on in front of him, and then seemingly thinking, you know what, I'll put my observation out there so people will look at me. That's all that's happening with George. He was never a shot at getting past Piastri. Piastri had nowhere to go in that situation other than grass. So what's he supposed to do? Like, George, wake up to yourself, mate.
Yeah, interesting one. The other one, obviously, I mentioned, we keep talking about the improving Williams, JR, 5th and 7th from 7th on the grid. So, again, Albon in the top 5. Carlos Sainz starting to be in the points. Williams are starting to be a sneaky threat for sort of the 4th, 5th sort of range for the constructors.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, it's just adding competitiveness into that constructors. Like, we've seen Haas and Kick Sauber sort of just drop off a little bit this year. Like in previous years, like we've seen some pretty decent fireworks from those teams, in all honesty. Like, or Sauber's sort of been off the radar for a little while. Seeing the Williams out there, it's just heartening. Like to see what's considered a junior team just excelling.
Exactly right. Well, we'll continue to keep our eyes tuned to the F1 caravan as it continues around the world in the coming weeks. In the meantime, boys, it might be time for some first quarter break oranges, and Dunn, might come back with some basketball if you're ready to bounce around the court.
Absolutely. Let's get to the rim.
Well, it's time to move on from around the grounds. It's time to talk some hooping action. The NBA is heating right on up. We're into the conference finals and we're down to 4 teams. There's a lot happening in the NBA world. And as we did a few weeks ago, it's time to bring back in our resident NBA guru. I say that with a question mark, like Ron Burgundy on a television. Good to have you back.
Thanks, mate. Good to be here. Yeah, guru, I'm glad you didn't say expert because that is clearly not true.
Guru is more about vibes than results, and that's
absolutely.
We've got black and white opinions, but they might not be right. But we'll get to that in a minute.
Absolutely.
That aren't absolutely right. NBA trades. We've seen some ones go interestingly mid-season. Obviously, the biggest of those was the trade involving the Lakers. There's talk now, when we talked about this last week at a high level, about Giannis, the Greek freak, maybe being on the move, which seems so far-fetched. He's been so tight to Milwaukee for a long time. This is the silly season in the NBA, though, as teams drop out, and as we said, we're down to 4 out of 30. There's 26 teams who firmly turned their eyes to next year. What are you hearing? What are you seeing? What are the juiciest of these storylines?
Probably the Giannis one. He's obviously taking up a lot of the headlines, particularly when he got on his AMA on Twitter, and lots of people were asking for opinions and things like that. And he threw a couple of little things out there which looked pretty good for those of us who are Miami Heat fans when he was asked his favourite locations within the USA, and he said Florida cities. So quite interesting to sort of see where he ends up. But given that he's so high profile and obviously such a good player, like salary matches and stuff, I think it's going to make it tough for him to move into a Florida city. But look, if we can make it happen, I think Miami's already proven, and Pat said in his press conference at the end of the season that Miami's willing to do whatever they can do. So who knows? We could end up with a Greek freak down in Miami.
Look, I'd certainly be happy. And look, I haven't bought a Pacific player jersey for a little while, so it might be time to upgrade the wardrobe if the other one that a lot of people are talking about is after the Celtics and Cavs bombed out. The Celtics most notably because they've been in that window for a few years. What does it mean for them now? We obviously saw the Tatum injury as well. Does that mean that they're going to start to, we quite often see at the end of one of these windows, they start to disassemble a roster a little bit early to try and get a jump rather than waiting to go into a full rebuild? Does Boston start moving pieces, or is that window still open for them?
Look, I think the window is still open. You look at someone like Jaylen Brown, and 12 months ago, he was the finals MVP. He was the one that sort of seemed to carry everyone, and there was lots of talk about Tatum not having that killer instinct and being able to get him over the line. So it'll be quite interesting to see what they do. If they get rid of Jaylen, what are the pieces? I've seen quite a few things, and Bill Simmons quite famously came out with a trade proposal to get some young pieces from Houston. Whether something like that materializes and stuff, who knows? But I think if they do that, then they're in a 12-month pattern where I guess they're just waiting for Tatum to get back, because you're getting rid of your second best player. They're really hamstrung with the contracts that they've got. They overpaid for Drew Holiday. People kind of gave him a bit of a break when they did sign that contract just because of the defense, because neither Jaylen or Jason are very good at defense. So Drew came in to fix that piece for them. But now we're 12 months with no Jason Tatum. I think they've got a real opportunity to maybe refresh the roster, go a little bit younger, get rid of the Al Horfords and players like that who aren't really contributing. Probably look to your Derek White and your Peyton Pritchard to see if they can still be competitive and make playoffs. But yeah, I think they're probably going to be one that's up there. The other ones that I think are probably looking to make a bit of a change are also the Golden State Warriors. They're coming to the end of the Steph Curry window. Jimmy Butler's similarly aged. Draymond. They've got maybe 1-2 years where they've really got to maximize these guys and put a competitive roster around them, or what are they going to do? They'll be back to the drawing board too, because these guys are going to retire and they don't really have a lot of contingencies at the moment. So there's a few things out there. I saw today that they were looking at Kuminga for Cam Johnson at the net, stuff like that. So I think this is probably going to be our most volatile off-season in quite a few years. I think there's going to be a lot of changes for a lot of teams. It's going to be very interesting, and it is my favourite time of the year.
Well, certainly exciting. We'll also have the draft to come in that midpoint as well. We saw Dallas won the draft lottery. San Antonio with the second.
Yep.
It's an class in the draft as well, and there's a few conjectures as to what that plays out. But we also know that draft picks very rarely turn a team around in the first year unless they're absolutely. So, but as we've seen with some of the guys that have come through in the last couple of years, second year, if you can build with a couple of consistent young guns, you can very quickly move up, especially now that 10 teams get to play in or play off basketball each year.
Absolutely, and I think the Mavs are one of those teams that they've probably got enough pieces around that a Cooper Flag can really come in and contribute straight away. Be interesting to see what happens around the Spurs. Wemby, Stephen Castle. Does a second pick really push them over the edge, or are they going to make some moves as well? Because they've got some pieces with Sohan and a few of those guys. Can they do some stuff? Maybe they can package a pick. Who knows? It's going to be really interesting, and I'm looking forward to it. But interesting to note, we do still have 6 Aussies who have declared for the draft as well. The one that's predicted to go the highest is Alex Condon, who played with Florida this year. And they did very well. So he's predicted to go anywhere from sort of 15 to 30. So it'll be interesting. And we also do have the distinct pleasure of having the tallest person in the draft this year. So Rocco Zakarsky playing for the Bullets the last couple of years. He's in there 7'3", 8'6" wingspan. So it'll be interesting to see where he goes.
Yeah, I think both he and Alex would be a pretty well tipped to be second round picks, both coming out of the NBL. And again, we talked about it last week. We've got the NBL NBA crossover. We've got the Panathinaikos and the Serbian team coming out as well. The NBL is continuing to really shine in terms of that next star system, and that probably speaks of it. I think Condon's also tipped to go around that same sort of spot. They're talking sort of the 30s to early 40s. We could see quite a bunch of Aussie names go in that realm when you look at a lot of the mock drafts.
Yeah, absolutely. And then in the next couple of years, we've got Dash Daniels coming through and a couple of other really sort of exciting prospects who are doing well in college, but just that little bit younger. So, future's looking really good for Aussie basketball for sure.
Certainly is. I think Lockie Olbrich, another one. Keep an eye out on the draft when it comes. Speaking of Aussies, let's turn to the award winners. And, we suggested there should be a lot of Aussies a lot of awards going to the Great Barrier Reef, one of our leading.
We did.
Might not have quite got the swag of trophies, but look, he was in there. So, what was your takeaway from the major awards that have been given out thus far?
Look, I think Dyson definitely was deserving of the most improved player. I still think he should have got Defensive Player of the Year, and I did sort of sit there doing a few of these ones when Evan Mobley was getting shown up in the last round of the playoffs against the Pacers when he couldn't defend an argument, let alone the paint. So, look, they're all pretty political, and we know what the NBA is like. They don't like to shower people with too many awards. They like to spread it around. The other one that I found particularly interesting was probably Rookie of the Year with Stephen Castle. Like, it was arguably a weak rookie class. Like, the top picks didn't really do a lot. And Stephen Castle, there's probably the arguments that it was good stat, bad team. He definitely was someone that benefited from having like Chris Paul on the team and learning from him and developing. And he was definitely better at the back end of the year. But look, I can't really argue too much with many of the awards that were given out. I think the best players got them for the most part, except for Mobley, where that should have been Dyson. But anyway, you can't win them all.
You certainly can't. I'll be interested to see on Castle how he comes alive or doesn't in year 2, because it's often the way with the award winners. And as you say, he might have somewhat overachieved there, but I mean, he potentially sits in a team. It looks like Dylan Harper's tipped to be the number 2 pick. They have 2 number 2 picks. They have Wemby, Darren Fox. They've got a roster that is going to start to be expected to perform at some point, and Castle's going to have to start moving up that chain. So how he carries that load, there's been a lot of Rookies of the Year in weaker classes that maybe haven't gone on to shine, and we hope for his sake that's not the case. We'll wait and see, though, as to what San Antonio and he put on the court next year. So,
yeah, 100%. But he's definitely given sort of those Malcolm Brogdon vibes from a few years back. I think he's going to turn into be quite a solid role player, but I don't think he's really going to be the star that we've sort of seen of the Paolo Bancheros and that sort of ilk of player.
Certainly will be interesting to see. Well, now that we've moved on from people who win awards, two blokes that certainly won't be getting any awards anytime soon as you and I. We, like a lot of tipsters, to be fair, this looked like it was a lay-down misère for the top seeds to go through, and it was thanks to some Game 7 magic that we didn't end up seeing Western and Eastern Conference finals that had no top 2 seeds.
Yeah, it's... well, I mean, OKC probably been the best team all year, and they've gone through rightfully. They had to do it the tough way, going 7 games against Denver, and really only looked convincing in the Game 7. So it'll be interesting to see whether that battle testing is going to help them against the T-Wolves, and are very excited and confident Ant Edwards, and particularly like Randall's playing well. All their role players seem to have stepped up. DiVincenzo, he's going to be taking it to them as well. So I think there's a pretty good matchup there. It'll be interesting to sort of see who ends up guarding Shea, because I know there's so many pieces that OKC can throw at the T-Wolves. They've got Caruso, they've got the J. Will, they've got so many guys that can try and slow down Ant. They can pack the paint, they can throw Case and Wallace at all those sorts of guys, Wiggins, etc. They've got those pieces there that they can slow Ant down. So you're going to need someone like a Mike Conley to help out, but then who's going to be guarding Shea? Who's going to be guarding J. Will? Because you're going to have Ant off the ball, like defensively off the ball quite a bit. So yeah, I'm looking forward to those matchups. This is a real chess match, this game or this series, to see how we go. And then Knicks and Pacers. Didn't predict either of these going through. I thought Knicks were really going to struggle against the Celtics, and obviously the injury to Tatum really sort of, I guess, played into that. Tatum's now going to be missing for 12 months, but I don't know. I'm very anti-Knicks from my 90s Miami Heat fandom, so I don't want them to win, but I really think the crowd's probably going to get them over in this one. I just think that energy when they're playing in Madison Square Garden is going to be too much for the Pacers to handle, but I didn't think the Pacers were going to get this far, so what do I know?
Not only have the Pacers got this far, they've dropped 2 games, knocking off a Bucks side that's got the Greek freak, and then knocking off a Cavaliers side who, as we know only too well, sealed a sweep against Miami with a 55-point win in Game 4, and then just forgot how to play basketball in the next 5 games.
Yeah, it forgot how to shoot, forgot how to get to the basket, forgot how to rebound, forgot how to defend. Like, it was incredible. They just went away from everything that they'd done well all year and just got absolutely run over by the Pacers and a red-hot Tyrese Halliburton.
Yeah, phenomenal. So what are we going with? Are we going with the top seeds again? And we're going to back in, and just go, even a broken clock's right twice a day?
Yeah, I think we're going to have to. I mean, the OKC are almost unbackable favourites, particularly for Game 1. They're $1.30, I think I saw earlier today, $3.75 for the Wolves, 8-point start. They're not predicting that one to be close, any betting market. And then, the Knicks look like they're slightly favoured. I think that one's predicted to be by the bookies a little bit closer. But I just think the Knicks, although whether has the Thibodeau effect come into play here, because all their starters have played big minutes to this point. Pacers have had a longer rest. Who knows?
Yeah, so
I think Knicks OKC.
OKC $1.22 to win the series. So I don't know that I'd be putting money on that at those rates, but hey, 22% is better than interest. But
yeah,
a little safer. Look, I'm going to go OKC, and I'm actually going to go the Pacers. I just have liked what I've seen, and as you said, a little bit more rest. They do have to overcome the extra games potentially at Madison Square Garden, as you said. But if they can get it done in 6, which is, kind of got to be the momentum for them, I think. If it goes to Game 7, I think the Knicks will be too strong. But, we'll have to have a bit of disparity. At least that way one of us will be right.
There we go. I like it. Odds are better this time than last. Yeah, look, I think the Pacers' depth for sure, and the fact that, because the Knicks have been struggling to, like, even with a 7-man rotation, I think that 7th man's been playing like somewhere between 8 and 11 minutes. Like, they're not getting a lot of court time at all, whereas the Pacers are still going 8 and 9 deep every game, and they've had a couple of easy wins where they've been able to rest a few of the starters. But I think, their depth is really going to test the Knicks. But I just think Cat, Bridges, Hart, and then Brunson. I just think that they might have a little bit too much firepower on them with the starters.
They've got some of those names that sort of take a game on their own shoulders, which is the big thing for the Knicks, especially with that home court crowd there. So we'll wait and see. It's going to be live and again, different to what was predicted, which is always nice when the cat gets amongst the pigeons there. So we'll wait and see. Ben, a big thank you to you, as always, for coming on today, and we look forward to catching up with you, hopefully, if our schedules align in the lead up to the NBA Finals in a couple of weeks' time.
Happy to talk again, and hopefully this time I'm right.
Well, it's time to move from the hard courts indoors at the basketball to the sizzling red clay of Roland Garros. And when we talk tennis, there's only one man we lean to, and it is Christian Montegan from the First Serve. Christian, it's looking a little chilly down there in Melbourne. Much cooler than Roland Garros, I would have thought.
Yeah, for sure. I wish I was over there in Paris. Unfortunately not. Obviously, the qualifying's got underway. And yeah, it's already hit us around the corner, right? It was only a few months ago. We were speaking about the Australian Open. And now we're going to have 3 Grand Slams in the space of, 3-4 months. So it's exciting times ahead.
It certainly is. There's been plenty of stuff happening in tennis. We talked last week with Lockie, I think, from memory, around the whole Yannick Sinner versus Max Purcell drama. We're going to try and stay on the positive and the up this week. It has been announced in the lead up to the French Open that some will say it lasted longer than they expected, but the short-term coach-player pairing of Andy Murray and Novak Djokovic have decided to go their separate ways. I'm not sure who else Novak Djokovic can turn to for advice here, apart from maybe Rafael or Roger.
Yeah, I mean, that was the question coming in, right? I mean, everyone, including us both, was shocked when we saw the news that Murray was partnering Djokovic to be a player-coaching relationship. And that was sort of end of last year, heading into the Australian Open. But it wasn't confirmed if they were to go on beyond that, right? Obviously, Djokovic made that great run to the semis, had to retire against Zverev, unfortunately, due injury. And I guess they both said, okay, let's just give this a red hot crack for the next few months. And the plan was to see where it would go after Wimbledon. So as soon as they announced after the AO that it'd be extended, I thought, okay, at least Wimbledon, they'll still be partnered, right? But obviously Djokovic has gone through a bit of a decline yet again, been knocked out, I believe, 4 times in the first round already this year, which is just so unlike Novak Djokovic. So obviously they've met up and they've mutually parted ways. And you're right, to your point. I mean, who else does Djokovic turn to in his corner? He's basically, hired a lot of, legends of the sport to give him advice, to give him, new ways, new techniques, new ways of looking at the game. But you've got to think to yourself, surely at Novak's age, what is he now, 37? Surely he looks at it and goes, do I really need someone? Can I just do it on my own? And you have to remember last year, he won the gold medal at the Olympics without a coach. So now he's heading into, Roland Garros here without a coach for the meantime. Look, I wouldn't be too concerned if I was him. I think he can do it on his own. It's a matter of motivation, right? At the end of the day, how much does he want to motivate himself to go that extra mile to get that 25th Grand Slam? So, yeah, we'll see how it plays out.
Certainly will. It's going to be an interesting Grand Slam as it shapes. Speaking of this, as you said, qualifying, probably the 2 earliest headlines I've got to take from it, and we don't want to dig too far into qualifying because we know that it doesn't tend to really shape the end of it. But the forgotten man of Australian tennis, most people, it's not by just, sheer slipping off the memory, Bernard Tomic. He's part of a little crew of Aussies in the men. There's a few Aussies in the women, and Bernard's actually remembered how to win on a Grand Slam surface. And now we'll come up against rising American Ethan Quinn, which by the time this comes out, we'll probably know how it's going. That could be quite a story in terms of the Aussies. And the other one for me is Bianca Andreescu, who absolutely came out of the blocks with a double bagel in the first round of qualifying.
Yeah, Andreescu was a surprising entry into qualifying because that's another name that you've forgotten about, right? She won the US Open a few years ago and she's sort of fallen off a cliff because of a lot of injuries. She was touted as the next big thing, knocking off Serena Williams in that US Open final. You thought, okay, here we go, the next big star in the making. But as we know, there's just so many emerging talents coming through now. It's so hard to keep up, right? Mira Andreeva being the latest. And it just goes to show if you're not consistent on the tour, Emma Raducanu is another one, you're going to fall behind. But that was a great win, obviously, for Andreescu not to drop a game. I think in these qualifying matches, it's all about reserving your energy. If you can knock off these games in less than an hour or so around there, then you're really doing well heading into the main draw because you've got minutes into your legs, the court conditions, the environment, and it will suit you well for the main draw. And usually, Chris, there's a couple of qualifiers who make the main draw and they can be sneaky dark horses and they can be dangerous, right? So, yeah, Bernard Tomic's the other name you mentioned as well. He's sort of been grinding, hasn't he? These past few months on the Challenger circuit. It's surprising because in years past, you think of Tomic as the tanker, right? Thomas the Tank Engine, as they like to call him, right? But I think this game in particular, at the French Open qualifying, highlighted that he still has that edge, that eagerness to, push himself, right? Prove people wrong. And a straight sets win over Coleman Wong, who isn't a pushover. He had a few good results earlier this year. So, yeah, that matchup against Ethan Quinn is going to be, quite something. Hopefully Tommy can make a game of it.
It's certainly going to be interesting to see how that plays out. Again, there's lots of stories that we know will come from qualifying. As you said, there'll be a few that undoubtedly will play themselves into a little bit of form there. It's just finding that balance of getting it done quickly because you don't want to be getting into round one with tired legs and then potentially get a tough draw. And there's going to be some very interesting draws when we have a look at the way the seedings have played out. Let's talk about the men's draw and who are those names? Like when we look back through recent weeks, obviously the big story was the fact that Jannik Sinner only just came back for his first tournament. We know that Alcaraz beat him in the final in Rome. Casper Ruud, Jack Draper have been in form. Alex Zverev's won a title. Holger Rune's won a title. Are these the names that we're expecting to be there or thereabouts, like when we talk about, or is this sort of a 2 or 3 horse race? And when we talk about genuine contenders, wouldn't surprise you winning this title.
Do you want me to be boring, Chris? Because I think I'm going to lean down that way. I'm going to say it's out of Alcaraz and Sinner. At this current point, I just don't see anyone else beating them, knocking them off, right? We saw that Rome final. Obviously, Alcaraz a bit too much for Sinner, but I was hearing Jim Courier speak post-match on the Tennis Channel. He said that result was actually good for the both of them, including Sinner, right? Because for Sinner's perspective, he comes in after the 3-month ban that he served. He said pre-tournament he didn't know what to expect, right? It was just low expectations. And so for him to make the final and to know that he has that level, right? He knocked off Casper Ruud 6-love, 6-1 in the quarters. Surely that gives him an added boost of confidence. And then you've got Carlos, who won the French Open last year. Obviously, Clay, you'd probably have to favour him slightly heading into this tournament. But, you look at the likes of Alexander Zverev. He's been very disappointing so far this season after that final at the AO. And you look at the others, Djokovic, we mentioned, hasn't been his same self. We can't write him off completely, but I mean, who else are there as a contenders for you, Chris?
It's an interesting one, isn't it? Zverev did win that title in Munich a few weeks ago. It was a fairly depleted field, I think it's fair to say. I think Kalyn Griekspoor fell just short of the semi-finals. No disrespect to Talon Griekspoor, and maybe Marizan in the semis as well. So, look, I was liking the look of Casper. We know he's been, two finals here in Roland Garros in the last 3 years. But yeah, I think when we talk genuine contenders, like I would be surprised if Casper Ruud, especially knowing now that Alcaraz and Sinner, now that Alcaraz has taken back that top seed, they're not going to fall on the same side of the draw. So you can't get to the final and hope that you then play the match of your life to knock off one of them. You're really likely going to have to get past either both of them or someone that's beaten one of them as well as one of them on your way there, which I just think is a big ask for some of these players. But on that note, is there any of these dark horses, if someone does manage to, upset one of these guys, is there any of these dark horses that you see making a run to the final? For mine, I've been, Lorenzo Musetti is a name that, he's tricky good on clay sometimes. If a draw could open, he could make a bit of a run, I think. There's a few other names, even Tommy Paul, we know he made the semi-finals in Rome. But Musetti, back-to-back semi-finals in Rome and Madrid, I think probably talks to, his ability. Ruud, again, Draper, these sorts of names. I think they're probably the ones for me.
You stole mine, to be honest. I had Lorenzo Musetti as well. But I was going to ask you, what's the definition of a dark horse? I feel like we have this conversation over and over because Musetti has cracked into the top 8, right? So, I mean, in terms of an outsider, yes, he's not one that's going to be favoured in the top 2 or 3, obviously. But given his good run of form that you mentioned in Madrid, Rome, made the final of Monte Carlo as well, the way he plays is just so good to watch on the eye. It's just really enjoyable tennis. That backhand, that one-handed backhand is just so good. And he can cause a lot of problems on the clay if he's, matched up with the right players on his section of the draw. If it all pans out his way and he's a bit fortunate. I'm just trying to look down the list. Jack Draper hasn't been too bad as well on the clay, made the Madrid final. And I was sort of a bit skeptical after he won Indian Wells. I was thinking, okay, heading into the clay, it's not really his preferred surface, but he's proved me wrong. He's played some phenomenal tennis over the past few tournaments. It's just with him, it's a matter about injuries and staying fit. And I think so far he's been able to prove the doubters wrong. So, yeah, if I had to pick two players, it'd probably be Musetti and Draper.
Yeah, if we want to go further afield, I'm not seeing anyone outside of the seedings. We want to go further afield for someone who might make a bit of a run. Maybe Jakub Mensik for me. We know he made the quarterfinals there at Madrid. I think he's got a decent enough clay game. Probably, you can't really look at a French Open form. I think this is only his second French Open, so we'll watch and see how he goes. But yeah, I think he's probably one. He's going to be one of the rising stars. There's other names there that might make a bit of a run, but I don't see them really going to any depth that's going to threaten. Now that we've said that, there'll be someone who comes from the outside and goes well. So. Let's talk about it. We'll move over to the women's contenders. And again, I think it's, look, depending on how you approach this, it's quite potentially a limited pool. But the really interesting thing for me here is when we look at the seedings, Jasmine Paolini won the singles and the doubles last week. Absolutely phenomenal. Not an easy feat to do, even at a 2-week Masters. The challenge for her will be she will play and go deep probably in the doubles and the singles here and how that workload balances out. But what her win means is the seedings are Goff, Pegula, Paolini, which means Iga Swiatek will play one of those players, allowing that everyone goes to seedings in the quarterfinals.
Amazing, isn't it? Like, so before these past couple of months, it actually just sprung to my mind that Iga hasn't made a final since she made the French Open, since she won the title last year. Like, that is just absolutely bonkers to think about. A player of her caliber to not even reach a final. That's just insane. And we know she's had a few issues this season. She recently lost her grandfather a couple of months ago, had a crack at the media with all these, speculation and rumors about her potentially skipping the grass court season to focus a bit on the mental side of her game. And she just, squashed those rumors saying, you don't know anything about me, et cetera, et cetera. So she really is feeling the pump at the moment, feeling the heat. So look, you can't write her off at the same time, though, right? I mean, you'd be foolish, right? I mean, she's won the tournament 4 times. It could be a matter of when she arrives at that tournament, it just gives you a special feeling, right? That special vibe, that energy, that extra boost to say, okay, I've been here, done that. Whereas some of the other players there in that draw that you mentioned in that top 4 haven't quite gotten over that final hurdle, right? You'll probably ask me who are the favorites to win it. I'd probably say Aryna Sabalenka for me at this current moment in time. I think she's been due to win one of these French Open titles for the past couple of years now. And I think the draw has opened up now with Iga, like I said, struggling a lot with her form. So I'd probably go ahead and say Aryna would be my number 1 pick to take out the title.
So if I said to you that some of those next tier of players, the Coco Gauff, a Jasmine Paolini, a Jessica Pegula, and Iga Swiatek, in 2 weeks' time, we look back through the looking glass and say that they won it. Would that be an outright shock, any of those? For me, Pegula, probably a little bit of a surprise based on current form. The other, we can see, Swiatek, we know her class. She's won 3 already at her young age. But yeah, it starts to get interesting. I think it's a little bit more open, but as you say, Arena's got such a lead in the rankings and has been so dominant over the last 12 months.
Yeah, I'd probably cut it off the Miran Andreeva. Looking at that top 6, I think Andreeva, we saw Ostapenko when she won the French Open at 17 years of age. No one expected it. Andreeva is one of those characters and players who can potentially pull off a couple of surprises, right? Albeit clay, not her particular favorite surface, but still, you can't underestimate a player of her talent already who's proven that she can handle those clutch moments on the big occasion. And so, yeah, that's probably my cutoff line. We saw Kim Win Zheng as well produce that straight sets win over Sabalenka in Rome, which is a bit of a surprise as well. So it goes to show the women's side is a bit more open now, and it has to do a lot with Iga because, in years past, we'd pencil her in, right, to win it. We'd say no questions asked, no one's going to go in her way. But now, things have changed. And, I agree. Pegula would be probably the biggest surprise if she were to win.
It's an interesting one, isn't it? I mean, we've got a couple of defending champions a little bit further down the rankings. You talked about one of them, Ostapenko, not defending champions, sorry, but former champions. Krejcikova, 15th seed, Ostapenko, 21st seed. I think when I look down the other seeds, though, once you get past those players, Zheng Qinwen, we know, obviously the for Zhang. I think the gold medal last year at Roland Garros. Some of these other players are floating around these rankings, when we go further down. A lot of players that you go back a bit, they've got some good clay form, but there's not a lot that are in red-hot clay form at the moment. I mean, Zhang had that loss to Coco Gauff last week, and it was one of the less attractive games of tennis, might be the nicest way to put it. But there's a lot of players as you go down the rankings who, on their history of form, you go, and Amanda Anisimova, you go, she should be a threat here at the French Open. Form just doesn't tell a story that they are, and I'm finding it hard to actually find many genuine dark horses outside of maybe the low-hanging fruit of a Svitolina.
Yeah, I was going to say Svitolina as well. That jumped out. I thought she was impressive in Rome, and for her age as well. Coming back from a baby, she surprised me a lot. She's made a few deep runs at majors in the past 18 months or so. I think made a French and a Wimbledon quarterfinal, if memory serves me right. So with her experience, you can never count someone of her quality out. Krejcikova, yeah, she's just come back, I guess, from a couple of injuries, lost in Strasbourg, round of 32. Yeah, I mean, can we chuck in Daria Kasatkina as an Aussie hopeful for us, maybe?
Well, it's the first time I see her properly flying that flag at a maybe. On Ostapenko, we know that she did win. We're talking about some of those less deep fields, but she won. She beat Sabalenka in the final in Stuttgart a couple of weeks ago. Dropped out in the semi-finals there, so maybe that was the same week, I think, that Svitolina won a title in France, if I'm not mistaken, on clay on a lighter field, beat Danilovic. Well, there's a few of these players. Look, they've got some form that could create maybe a bit of an argument. But, yeah, again, it's just so hard to look past Sabalenka and then that next cast, isn't it? So, look, for me, those, Ostapenko obviously knows how to win here, but it's just the fact that she's probably going to have to get past 2, maybe 3 of those players in that to get there. And a bit like the men's, it's hard to fathom that at this point.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, take Ostapenko, for example. I mean, she has the ability to go all the way right. We know that. It's just about the unforced errors. She needs everything to go her way because we know she loves to hit the lines. She loves to take those risks. Whereas someone like Sabalenka, she's proven to win, those sorts of games in the big moment. She's been there before. She's consistent. Whereas, players like, just going through the list, Ostapenko, Donna Vekic is another one who, has some promising form. She won silver, I think, at the Olympics last year in Paris. So, that's another good clay court player who can potentially cause a bit of trouble. So, yeah, there's that pack in there who you feel, there's upsets in there if they meet one of those top 4 or 6 players, as we mentioned before, to really, open up the draw. So I think, correct me if I'm wrong, Chris, but I reckon this is going to be probably the most wide open women's draw we've seen at the French for, I don't know, maybe the past 5 years, maybe.
Yeah, I think you could be right. One that I'm going to throw in there, and she showed a bit of form against Paolini in the Italian Open. She beat Svitolina, she beat Naomi Osaka and Madison Keys, is Peyton Stearns. She could be a giant. I don't see her going really deep, but she could be one that I could see on her day at 23 years of age. She's just got that confidence. She's that kind of sort of, I wouldn't say quite a brash American, but, I think she also beat Kalyn Skyer as well. So she knocked off some names. She's snuck in now. So she could be a dangerous one. She should, again, depending, there'll be some dangerous people like Osaka sitting outside those seatings, but it's going to be interesting to see who can get it. But yeah, she'll be one to watch for me. And again, I'm really looking forward to that draw, which will happen just after we come out on Thursday evening. So really looking forward to seeing where that is, because seeing which quarter Swiatek falls in and who she's potentially matching up with. And, we always look at the draw and then we're like, oh, look at that mouth-watering matchup. Doesn't eventuate, but anyway. Look, we're looking forward to the French Open. It is, the run now of the Grand Slams. We have that big gap after Australia just so that Jannik Sinner could have a holiday. And then we go into the Grand Slams getting it up. But as always, if people want to find more detail and up-to-date daily bits of information and coverage of the French Open as it goes, including the qualifying at the moment, the First Serve's website is the first place. Where else can they find you?
Just on the First Serve social media accounts, Instagram, Facebook, X, we're posting regularly the results, updating you on the qualifying results from an Aussie perspective as well. And as you mentioned, check out www.thefirstserve.com.au for all your articles, features, latest news. You'll have it all there.
So, mate, thank you. As always, great to get your deep and thorough insight on the tennis.
Cheers, Chris. Appreciate it.
Well, it's now time to move from the basketball, and we're going to head to the round ball, the football. Well, they're both round balls when you think about it, aren't they? But we'll head to the round ball, the soccer, the football, whatever you might like to call it. And when we dig into that, the main man we go to is Lachie Avil. He's back. He's looking very healthy today, very vibrant, mate. You're back in the land of the living fully and completely. The man from Round Ball Australia is on with us.
Yeah, g'day, Chris. Feeling a lot better. Thank you. You can get through more than just a couple of sentences without having to pause for a coughing fit. So bodes well for today's episode, I think.
Does bode well. I thought we were going to be reading a obituary on here the other week. So I'm glad that's great content. I mean, it might have got a lot of clicks. That podcaster passes live on air, but yeah, glad that's well in the distance now. So the one thing that we can talk about, mate, is there's plenty of football. There's some competitions that are wrapping up. By the time we go to air, because of our wonderful Wednesday into Thursday sort of release, the Europa League will be decided, and that'll be interesting. But the one we want to talk about to kick us off is the dub, the A-League. It's wrapped with a surprise twist in the tail, one that not many outside of JR predicted coming.
Yeah, a massive twist. Obviously, we've talked about the semi-finals and the fact that they were quite lucky to be in the grand final in the first place, the Central Coast Mariners. But yeah, a crazy grand final against Melbourne Victory. Go 1-0 up and to go all the way almost and win in regular time. And then just to have that goal knocked back to go to 1-1 into extra time and then to penalties. It's always a test of a team. Can you kind of regroup and get your heads right after you thought you had it and it slipped away at the last few minutes? So really great effort from the Mariners, the little club that couldn't. Of course, they could. They've now won their 3 championships in the last 3 seasons across the men's and the women's competition. The start of that streak, the women's club didn't even exist. So it's quite an incredible achievement for the football club. And they slotted 5 out of 5 penalties. So when you go down to that, part of the game, scoring 5 from 5 and let the other team make a mistake, you can't really do much better.
No, you certainly can't. At the end of the day, they did what was in front of them. We can talk about the what ifs, the what mays from the semi-finals, but they are the champions. They have the trophy. As we said, it was surprising. It was against odds, but it was kind of fitting after they were the team that ended Melbourne City's undefeated season, that perfect season that was potentially, and I had someone pick me up on that, saying that a perfect season should only be classed a perfect season if you win all your games. I was like, geez, that's
Yeah, no, I think you're right. It's like that baseball analogy, right? It's the no-hitter versus the perfect game. You can't allow some walks in there as well with some draws. But no, I think you're right. It is fitting that it is the team that beat Melbourne City that went on to win the championship. If Melbourne Victory had won that, then you just know City fans would be saying forever that, they didn't really face the true test that season. But I guess that's just how the final series cracks out, isn't it?
Well, it certainly is. It's an interesting piece, and it does wrap up our domestic season. And, we're pretty much at that point now where it's all closed and done in terms of women's football, with one little thing on the horizon, though, for that team I just mentioned in terms of Melbourne City.
Yeah, absolutely. Really exciting times. The viewers will also know the first results of this game, but Melbourne City are away in China, I think it is actually, to participate in the Final Four of the Women's Asian Champions League, which is the first time this competition has been held in its proper form. So a really exciting occasion for Australian football in general. Obviously, Melbourne City were hoping that they were going to be able to travel to this tournament with the ability to lock up a treble. It's not quite happened that way, but still chasing a continental ground is a really cool achievement. They play their first game on Wednesday night. As I said, that will have already been played. And then the final a couple of days later, if they are successful, and some really big prize money on the line as well. We're talking millions of Australian dollars, depending if you make the final and win the championship. So really exciting for Melbourne City. Michael Matriciani, obviously the last couple of weeks haven't gone ideally, but a really, really big chance to make up for that here.
It's a nice chance, as you say, to try and, I guess, get some redemption. Interestingly enough, it's a place that hasn't really been in the headlines where they're playing for about 5 years or so, maybe 5.5 years, a little place by the name of Wuhan.
Yeah, you say that place and it sends shivers down the spines of a lot of Victorians, but a lot of people around the world as well. That little city of Wuhan has given us a lot of difficulty the last few years, so hopefully Melbourne City can go put it right.
I do love how some towns and, they come into fame or infamy for just their own little reasons, I don't know if it's quite in the same class, but, Waco, Wuhan, these are some of these weird and wonderful, otherwise they wouldn't have been on people's radars. But anyway, it is, and it pops back up. And, hopefully Melbourne and Wuhan have a much better relationship this time around. As you said, we'll know that, the outcome of the semi-final and then the finals when we head to I believe Sunday is just is that correct? Saturday night, the game, our time.
Time zones. One of the two.
It's on the weekend. Yeah,
it's on the weekend.
Go. So we'll watch that with bated breath. We'll update you about that next week. We can't wait to see where it goes. This next one, Lockie, another trophy has been decided, and it's a club that's not exactly replete with a trophy cabinet. I don't even know if they built a trophy cabinet yet. Crystal Palace, 1-0 winners over my side, Man City. It hurt when I woke up to this one. Look, I'm going to be honest, I didn't even get up for this because I really didn't even think it was going to register that much. I thought it was just going to be a fait accompli, but that tells you about the English football landscape at the moment as much as anything and as much of the magic of the cup.
Yeah, the magic of the cup and Crystal Palace. It's such a unique story, right? All the build-up saying we've never won a major trophy, and people probably not too familiar with the club are waiting for that. Since 1953 or in the last 40 or 50 years. No, I think it's about 120 or more years of their existence, never won a major trophy. And it's a really special occasion. It just highlights, as you say, the magic of the cup, what the FA Cup can do for clubs. You have a team like Crystal Palace. They've been a Premier League permanent member for the last decade or so. It's hard to remember, at least for someone like me, a time where they weren't in the top flight of English football. So for a club that doesn't have a trophy, it's a special day out for Wembley. We saw the scenes of a lot of their fans in the stadiums. There's a very popular social media guy, Hitlo, he's a Crystal Palace fan, and he was talking on, what's that Gary Neville overlap? One of the podcasts where they do all the fan debates, those ones. He was talking on that about having the option to do some TV work during the FA Cup final, but instead deciding, no, I want to go sit in the terrace with my dad, and if we win, this is why we do it, and this is football, and no other sport can create those moments. And for Crystal Palace, it was an exceptionally special one on the weekend.
Yeah, it certainly is, as you say. I think they've been in the FA Cup final twice before. As you said, they're founding members of the Premier League. They spent a little window back down in the Championship in the sort of the 90s and early 2000s at different points, but they've been a fixture of the Premier League for most of its history. So to think that they'd never won anything outside of being the champions of the Championship twice in their history, and that even dates back to it being the second division, the first division, all those sorts of things. Yeah, it's a very lean time. So to have that real major trophy finally, as much as it pains me as a Man City fan, look, it's great to see it not going to one of the other major powers. And we like seeing this about. I mean, it's not quite on the levels of Leicester City winning the Premier League those years back, but it's a really cool story. And again, I happen to have some friends who are quite diehard Crystal Palace fans, and what it meant to them. Another FA Cup to Man City fans, or even to Arsenal or Liverpool, probably doesn't register that much, right? That's a nice one to just chuck in the back of the cabinet. But it's great to see this story that's come of it and what it meant to the fans.
Especially funny to see Pep Guardiola throwing in the Community Shield just to make the point that Manchester City hadn't had a trophyless season. I thought was quite funny. You're stretching the bow a bit there, but special day for Crystal Palace. And yeah, Man City, they got to go back to the drawing board. They've just said goodbye to Kevin De Bruyne overnight as well. So that's another chapter of their history closed, and things just unraveling a little bit at the short term for Manchester City.
I think in this equal opportunity era and all these sorts of things, Lockie, we need to understand that shields are trophies too, and hang on to what we've got because we need to. And maybe we've just built ourselves to a spot just in case anyone decides to try and take anything away from us, to say, well, we currently don't have anything that you can take away from us. But that's a whole other story for another day that we could wax lyrically. I'm sure you are very passionate about that. All of those charges and everything else that sits still pending as they work through all of the fun of those very open and transparent bodies that involve UEFA, FIFA, and all the other governing football organisations.
Yeah, enjoy League Two, Erland. Look forward to that.
I just can't wait till he scores 220 goals in League Two. It's going to be great. maybe we'll be signing Australian players then. That'll be a nice touch point for me. Let's move on to something a little less positive. And we see all the time people make inadvertent comments and they bite them in the backside a little bit. We saw one of the NRL players getting sacked this week for liking a post that bagged out their coach. And now we've seen Gary Lineker making an anti-Semitic comment, which he sort of tried to downplay after the fact. It was a Zionism post tying rats to Jews and a little bit more, and that looks like it's going to be the end of him. Match of the day, where he's been such a key part for 26 years. He's been really part of the furniture of coverage of English football.
Yeah, I have to say I haven't seen the specific details of the post and what happened, so I can't speak to that. But, he was supposed to be the headliner of their 2026 World Cup coverage as well over in English football. So that is, I'm not going to say it's a lot. Again, I don't know the context of exactly what he said, but for him to give up a position or to be removed from a position like that is a big, big deal. So, yeah, we're in that kind of world now, aren't we? Where you really have to be careful about your presence online, and as soon as you put something up there, it's there for all to see. So there's not a lot of hiding anymore.
No, it's not. And look, I think he fell on his sword before he was pushed, and it's not the first time he's been controversial. He talked about some government asylum policy, I think maybe in 2023, where he said it was not dissimilar to what Germany used in the 30s, which, you can draw a couple of bows from that pretty quickly in regards to it. So he has apologised, said, look, he didn't intend for it to be classed as, viewed as anti-Semitic, but it's fallen on his sword. And look, it's going to create some opportunity. The likes of Mark Chapman and Kelly Cates will step up, but again, he's been a wonderful voice of football, separate to this commentary. So it'll be a changing of the guard, the BBC.
Yeah, interesting. I mean, it feels like these kind of incidents are happening every week. Maybe we just need someone like an Ian Wright come backing into men's football because, of course, he's not welcome in women's football anymore. So maybe we have to get him back over.
I'm still stunned that, some of those other pundits like Michael Richards haven't found a way to get themselves cancelled yet. So there's a few of those boys that it's just Peter Crouch, like some of these guys.
Yeah, the CBS crew, absolutely.
But anyway, it is a whole different story. Let's move on to someone who's moving into a new role rather than out of an old one. And it is former Socceroos boss Graham Arnold, looking very pensive there, deep in thought about what he's going to do to turn around and accelerate Iraqi football alongside one of his assistant coaches, which intrigued me from an A-League point of view, recently departed Newcastle Jets coach, Rob Stanton.
Yeah, Robbie Stanton, obviously. I'm very curious about the timeline of these events. Maybe when Robbie realised he had a gig lined up with Arnie over in Iraq, then maybe that was the point in time where he started speaking his mind a little bit more. But it's a really interesting appointment for Iraq. They sit teetering on the edge of automatic qualification. Of course, there's 2 more games. I'm sure we'll talk about Socceroos when the time comes in the next couple of weeks. 2 more games in the third phase. Iraq sit third behind South Korea and Jordan, I believe it is, testing my knowledge there, in their group. But they also play both of those teams in the next window. So there is an opportunity for Graham Arnold to go bang, bang and automatically qualify a nation for the World Cup. And it didn't look like he was going to do that, all of 6 months ago. So, yeah, it's a really interesting switch. It'll be an interesting culture clash as well. Obviously, going from East to West Asia, there's lots of differences there, but there are also a fair few Iraqi players that have been playing club football in Western countries. So there'll be a little bit of a bridge there, but it's a big task for him. And there's a lot of weight on his shoulders as well. Iraq have only ever qualified for 1 World Cup, and his contract will run through to the next Asian Cup, but immediately gets cancelled if he doesn't make the World Cup. So 48 teams, we know we've experienced this with Australia and New Zealand as well. It shakes things up a little bit. The hurdle is lower to jump over, but for Graham Arnold, it's still a tough task. Everything is pointing towards the fact that you'll have to go through the next phase of qualification in phase 4. So it's going to be a pretty line ball there.
Yeah, it's an interesting one. It adds some, different stories and narratives along it. I'm just trying to figure out the adjustment from being Latrell Mitchell's goal kicking mentor to coaching quite an adjustment. Quite ironic as I have my New South Wales Blues jersey on and Latrell being named this week, and we talked about that earlier in the show. But look, we wish him all the best. We won't be wishing him the best, however, if he does not get those wins, because as you said, he needs to get those 2 wins to get them through, and somehow comes up against an Australian side that could fall in a playoff and those sorts of things. We certainly won't be wishing him the best then. But wow, that'd be some cool storylines if that was to happen, or if we would somehow end up playing them in a knockout stage or something in a World Cup or at some other point in the Asian Cup in the future.
I fear for the legacy of Graham Arnold as Socceroos manager if he somehow proves detrimental to Australia's World Cup tilt at some point or another. It's unlikely, obviously. Probably the likeliest scenario is that we would play Iraq in the groups of the 4th qualifying phase, probably not at the World Cup proper. But boy, oh boy, if he was the reason Australia didn't make it, I don't think he could come back home. That's how much his legacy would turn on the flip of a coin.
It'll be an interesting one. I'm thinking more like a quarterfinal or a semi-final at the Asian Cup. If he makes it that far, might be a more likely But again, I think it could be a cool story by that point. If Australia wins, it's a really nice story because it's, he's doing his bit for a lower ranked team and all that. But we'll wait and see. We'll watch the journey of Graham Arnold and Robbie Stanton and the Iraq football team now, probably a little bit more intently because of those Aussie ties. Someone else who's taken on a new role, or maybe not, Lockie, is Kayo have announced this week that they've got the rights to the World Club Cup in the US and will be televising the games back into Australia. But you preface this off air to me with saying maybe not. So I'm intrigued to know the full story here. I've only taken the headline reading.
Well, no, they definitely are broadcasting the Club World Cup, but the phrase I was kind of backing up against you there was that big news for Kayo. It's not big news. DAZN, who we now know is the owner of Kayo and Foxtel, had already said they're broadcasting all these games for free worldwide for the Club World Cup. So they can call it big news, whatever they want. It's a little bit of PR. The games will be on streaming platform DAZN, which probably will just be Kayo in the matter of a year's time or something like that. But if you are a Foxtel subscriber or you are a Kayo subscriber, you can also access the games on those platforms that you already signed into. So maybe a few less click of the buttons on the remote, but that's about all this is.
What you're telling me is this is going to be KO freebies as we have with our, state league sports and the touch football championships that I was ground announcing last week and all these sorts of things. That's the level that the World Club Cups come to in Australia.
No, I am a big believer in the quality of this event and the potential for it to grow. However, the streaming situation remains that FIFA have a good old handshake with those Saudi Arabian friends who have put a lot of funding into DAZN recently. So to get this competition off the ground, it will be streamed free around the world. And Australia now gets to click those buttons on Foxtel and Kayo as well.
And well, there you go. Again, trying to draw some more to Kayo, I think, with that freebies. I think you could be right in terms of the overall conglomeration and consolidation later on under one of those banners. And it'll be interesting to see, to be fair, how much interest this draws with no Australian team being present, maybe at the pointy end. But I've seen some recent commentary around the fact that ticket prices are continually dropping for some of these games between, again, no disrespect, some of the lesser known and smaller market teams. Some of those matches are, the ticket prices are now a quarter or a third of what they were when they were initially advertised because they haven't sold quite as many as they initially may have expected.
I mean, this tournament has no legacy yet, right? It has no history. It has no build-up. It's kind of just been pushed through. Teams qualified for this tournament without knowing that they were qualifying for it. So when they won the Champions League a couple of years ago, this tournament didn't exist. There's been no real build-up to it. Maybe in the weeks after the European season finishes, it's probably only, I'm trying to think, we're about 25 days out, I think. So with the final week of the domestic seasons kind of wrapping up and then one more for the Champions League, there's maybe two and a bit weeks between the final of the Champions League and the start of the Club World Cup. I think the regions outside of Europe, in Asia, Oceania, definitely, probably Africa as well, there will be a lot of anticipation for this tournament in the future. Again, we haven't quite had the build-up we usually would, but people will see the spectacle. They'll see Bayern Munich or Man City or someone lift the trophy this summer, and those images will go around the world, and all of a sudden there'll be another 4-year clock ticking over again as we get back to the next one. So it'll grow. It's not there at the moment. Obviously, it's a new competition, but especially for teams outside of Europe, I think it's actually a really cool thing, and I hope to see it grow.
Yeah, fingers crossed. To quote the great Field of Dreams, build it and they will come. We'll wait and see how it goes. It'll be interesting to see. As you say, it's a little peculiar when you look at some of the teams in there that, like, for instance, Liverpool aren't in there, but that ties back, as you said, to that qualifying framework that leads up over 4 years. It's about teams that won tournaments in certain years, all those sorts of things. Or if you're into Miami, you just got gifted a spot as the host nation in inverted commas, which was a little peculiar. But it is what it is. We've got 32 teams. It's a great opportunity. As you said, if you're a fan of Mamelodi Sundowns from South Africa and they get to, play against Bayern Munich, when else does that happen? It's kind of like, we talked about the magic of the FA Cup. Hopefully that's what this will be later on in time, where your team, even though you're not chasing a result, but to see your favourite player from your local league who's done well on the continental stage then take on the best of the world, that's going to be huge, and other countries will get to host it. So it'll be great for those countries too.
Yeah, I mean, the real world example for us is Auckland City. I know we don't have any Australian teams, but from an oceanic perspective, this is a semi-professional team that has drawn against Bayern Munich. That is the matchup that we're going to see in a couple of weeks' time. So again, that's another thing that will change. There won't be a semi-professional team from Oceania in the next edition. There's the whole Oceanic Pro League thing that we could get into that will be the path for qualification. But it's a really cool angle, right? When else in world football do you get to play competitive matches? This will go down in a very similar way to the legacy of Ange Postecoglou with South Melbourne going up against Manchester United in the first ever Club World Cup. That's the kind of legacy that we can think about that this tournament has the potential to create.
Yeah, it harks back to some of those stories you hear of, the early, European and some of those teams that came over here and played against the likes of, St. George Budapest and those sorts of things, right? For these Auckland City, it will go down in family legacy. It will go down in history about the time they took on Bayern Munich, irrespective of the results. So we look forward to those storylines that do come out of it and it building, as you say, glass half full, not glass half empty. I like it, Lockie. I know you're not going to be glass half full about our next topic. 2-leg semi-finals. We're 1 week into the A-League finals. We saw Melbourne City and Western United play out in front of a very dismal crowd last week. Auckland took the lead in the Melbourne victory game. What do you take from the first legs? Do the second legs mean much? Do both of them mean different things? Tell us the storyline here.
So on last Friday's episode of the Round Ball Australia podcast, I centered the thesis of the entire episode and probably the first 25 minutes about why we do not need 2-leg semi-finals in A-League football. I know it's a very traditionalist football thing to do, these kind of 2-leggers in knockout competitions, especially when it's not like a specific tournament like a World Cup. But it just is not suited for the A-League for me, particularly with a lot of the scenarios we have with the clubs right now. You look at Melbourne City and Western United, this is the absolute example, biggest case study possible for why 2-legged semi-finals are useless. We went to Amy Park last Friday night. I was there. There was barely anyone in the stands, right? And there's the whole Tarneet thing there as well. But we're literally going back to the same stadium a week later. Teams are going to be wearing the same kits. There's going to be the same amount of empty chairs in Amy Park. And the leg's already decided. The tie is already decided. City are 3-0 up over Western United. This is not going to change. Western United are a good team. They can score a couple of goals, but Melbourne City is the best defence in the league. There is a 0% chance that Western United progress through this tie. That's a Lachlan Avil guarantee right there. There is absolutely no point in showing up to Amy Park on Saturday night. Everyone knows what's going to happen, and we can just move on. And even with Auckland victory, it's like, okay, Auckland came over and got a 1-0 lead away from home. They have been the best team all year. They finished above Melbourne victory. If we're drawing out from a hat like in the Champions League and we're saying, okay, these two teams can play each other, it wouldn't be fair to just have a 1-legged tie. And that is such a special occasion because some of the, unless you're a Bayern Munich or a Real Madrid, you're not making the final 8 of the Champions League every year. So it's these 1 in 4, 5. If you're a small club, maybe 1 in 20 year thing. Okay, if you get that far, yes, your fans absolutely deserve the right to witness that occasion at home. But this is an A-League semi-final we're talking about. 4 out of the 13 teams, that's almost a third of the competition, get there every single year. I'm sorry, it's not that special. If you don't finish above the team you're playing, your fans don't get a right to see it in the home stadium. We don't need them. Get rid of them. I could give you 3 other better options that could reward the top teams better. And it starts with probably the top 4 playing in week 1 and having a double chance. So at least you then get the opportunity for the good clubs, the clubs that have been well supported and playing good football throughout the year to actually play in week 1 of finals. It's such a better solution than these silly 2-leggers.
All right, I'm going to throw a couple of things back at you. My first challenge is there's going to be more empty seats this week at Amy Park than there was last week. My second piece is the Central Coast Mariners women's team and Melbourne City, well, maybe not Melbourne City because of the end result, but they may argue about the value of the 2-legged finals, but I think that's the exception, not the rule, to your point. And my next thing is there something broken where almost 50% of your teams make the finals? I think it's an issue with the NRL, the AFL, the A-League. Could we go to a 5-team final series? That way, every position matters a little bit more than the one below it.
No, I think 6 is a good number. I think you just have to think more carefully about how you're structuring it. So, for example, I think it's ridiculous if we talk about the first leg of the semi-final not having the same amount of importance as the second leg, obviously, right? Because it's the score at the end of the second leg that determines who goes on. Well, then you've got Auckland FC, who are the perfect case study for a team coming in their first year. They've created all this momentum. They'd sold 29,000 tickets for the second leg of the semi-final before the first one was even played. They don't get to start really in front of their home fans in finals until the third week. And then they could be out, or it could be 7 more days to a grand final and then they're done. Imagine a world where instead of the top 2 teams get the bye in the first week, it's the bottom 2. So you're essentially considering it like a top 8, like footy, NRL, AFL. You assume that 5th or 6th just win their elimination finals. So then you get the top 4 playing qualifying finals. The winners skip a week to the prelims. The losers play 5th and 6th in the next week. At least then you get to start. Sorry?
Play a rested team, though. So you're rewarding 5th and 6th. Like, I understand where you're coming from the top 4, but you're playing a rested team, which is generally seen as an advantage. I know some people say the lack of continuity, but you're playing a rested team. You've got a team who has the week off. So I don't think that works from that point of view. I understand where you're coming from elimination finals point of view. But again, it's why I think top 5 makes sense. Like, again, 5 out of 13, right? And we're going, the prediction is we'll go to 14. I believe that only a third of teams deserve to make the finals. Why do we have half our teams? In some competitions, we've had times where more than half the teams have made finals in Australia. It's bizarre. The NBA is the same. The play-ins a debacle. The NBL's the same. Why are we rewarding mediocrity where you've only got to get to the midpoint of the ladder or just above? And if you have runaway top 2, 3, 4 teams, 5th and 6th might actually lose more games than they win and get into the finals.
Because finals needs to be a journey. If you want it to be a selling point of your league, it can't be 1v4, 2v3, go into a grand final and play off. I'm not saying that's the specific one you say, but finals needs to, in my opinion, we look at the AFL and the NRL. I know we don't have the same amount of teams, but we play it over 4 weeks. All the best teams start in week 1. They just play a game of football. It can't be that difficult to figure that out. And there is a 4-week journey that culminates in a grand final. All the teams that are playing in week 1, right, 3rd to 6th, there's significantly less a portion of that fan base than just 2 teams from the top combined that think they're actually going to go all the way to the grand final. So the journey doesn't really start for the fans of the 2 best teams until the 3rd week when they actually get to see their team at home. We want this build up, and at the moment, the first 2 weeks of finals in the A-League, man, if I'm going to be honest, have felt pretty dead.
That's, again, why I'm suggesting a 5-team final series. Team 1 does have the bye. That is the whole in this, but they earn a rest. Team 2 and 3 play for the right to play Team 1. Team 4 and 5 play a game that is immediately elimination. The winner of that then goes into another elimination game. Essentially what you end up having is you have 4 weeks of finals that culminate with a preliminary final and then a grand final. It was the traditional format for a lot of competitions for a long time. And it is exactly that. It's a journey. If you're the team coming from 4th or 5th, you're playing sudden death football every week. If 3rd and 4th are fighting as we're coming into the semi-finals, there's a big difference between finishing 3rd and 4th. At the moment, you could argue there's not a big difference between finishing 3rd and 4th in the A-League. So it does create that journey, and I think it reflects until we get to more than 14 teams with being a fair representation. I mean, at the end of the day, let's have a look at this year's season. Would anyone have been upset if Adelaide didn't make the finals? Even the Adelaide fans didn't want to be in the finals.
But also the counter argument to that is that having Sydney in 7th would actually be good. In this specific year, that absolutely would have made for a better final series.
Based on that, let's bring all 12 of them in, and we'll have some relegation, what do they call it? Not relegation, repechage games for those people. That's right, they've got those at the Australia Cup playoffs.
We need to get to 16 teams. We need to get to 16 teams and have an 8 teams final series. That's what has to happen.
I still disagree. I think if we want 8 teams, we should have 20. If we want 8 finals, we need 20 teams.
But also the importance of winning the premiership, so finishing top at the end of the regular season, is being heightened at the moment. The prestige of that being a trophy is going up. So to have a little more teams in finals and a little more variance in who wins the championship is not always a bad thing.
Yeah, I can understand that. But again, I don't love the story of, 7th and 8th. Like we're sitting in that situation almost in the NBA. We nearly we did dodge a situation thanks to Oklahoma stumbling through Game 7, where we could have had no 1 or 2 seeds in the in the conference finals. Like it would have been quite
play better basketball.
Yeah, I just think we're going to have to agree to disagree here, but I think we agree that the current system is broken. It is not right, and neither of us likes the 2-league semi-finals because it just takes away. As you said, if it was drawn out of a hat, it would make sense. Maybe that's what we'll do. Let's just draw the finals out of a hat, just everyone. You get away.
We have an actual cup system that runs through the regular season of the A-League. That'll be great as well.
Draft lottery. We'll have weightings based on where you finished.
God.
More TV for Kayo to put for free. Anyway, moving on. Let's talk about the fact that who are you tipping from here? Is it just going to remain the same? What's going on? Is that the end outcome? We've got 2 teams going through that have already won.
I give Melbourne Victory a chance. I don't give Western United a chance. I think Melbourne City are going through 100%. I said this before the first leg as well for Melbourne victory, Auckland. I'm quite proud of this, actually. I could see Auckland coming away from Amy Park with a 1-0 win and then Melbourne victory actually deciding to then turn up when they go away from home. They are not a team that can put 3 games in a row of good football, of consistent high-level performances. That's just not what they've done for the last 5 years, pretty much since they lost Kevin Muscat as a manager. That's been a little while ago now. They're a team that is streaky and they show up for big moments and they sometimes fall away when the moment's not so big. And in the first leg of a semi-final, especially when they came off such an important victory away to the Wanderers, you see that dip in the form roller coaster that is the Melbourne victory. So going away from home into enemy territory with a big support behind Auckland, a 1-0 deficit, Daniel Arzani taking pot shots in the post-game show, that kind of momentum is building. So Melbourne victory are one of those teams that can just pull it out of the hat when they want to. We saw that against the Wanderers, and I'd give them a little bit of a chance against Auckland. They're going to be incredibly tough to beat. Their back four are just massive human beings, just first of all. It's only the second time I saw them live last week, and it just really strikes you how physically massive they are. So they're hard to get past, but Melbourne victory have one of the best attacking lines in the league. And yeah, sometimes they just pull out these moments. So you never know. A little bit of something special from a Nishan Volupale or a Daniel Arzani or a Zinedine Mashash early in this game, make it 1-1. Could be a very interesting contest.
It certainly could. I think in terms of that, it's very likely. You did get that right, the 1-0. I would like to maybe go back and cut up your prediction and maybe another. I don't know if you gave us a Lachlan Avil guarantee, but it was pretty close when you said that Melbourne City were going to beat Central Coast in the semi-finals. But anyway. Moving right along. Hey, look at the bright side of 2-leg semi-finals before we do move on to our final point. You got 3 games of football at Amy Park on the weekend, just for you and Christian.
That was nice. Yeah, Christian only joined me for one of them, though. Lazy guy, but look, it was cool to have a lot of football in Melbourne. If only the stands were a bit more packed and we got some more. You know what? Actually, the football was quite good. I won't say it wasn't entertaining. I enjoyed the football outright, but a little bit more atmosphere would have been nice.
I think that's the big asterisk on all of it. Let's wrap up the football with one last piece. Juan Mata has been quoted during the week as saying he's open to becoming a club owner in the A-League. He already owns a stake in San Diego FC in the MLS and has actually, according to his version of events, had conversations already about becoming involved in a potential consortium. Paletti will be very happy to hear this for Canberra FC.
Yeah, Canberra. I've also heard Central Coast Mariners. I've heard a lot of different names. To be honest, I think people are reading into this so much. He's also said that he's not going to do anything in terms of club ownership until he retires. So he still wants to keep playing football. He's got to decide his playing future before he can decide his ownership future. So, look, it'd be great to have someone of Juan Mata's stature invest in the A-League. Is it going to happen? Who knows?
Well, as you say, it would be great. We've seen it in the NBL here with some of the former players getting invested, so it would be wonderful. I'm really disappointed that he's not going to do it till after he's playing because we love these stories of owners having too much influence over managers, having too much influence over players. We could solve it all by him owning, managing and playing. Like, there we go.
Yeah, it's funny, isn't it? Just a little bit of a side piece here, how all that conversation about Mata's selection and Stadger's decision not to include him has really died down when the Wanderers went on that 12-game unbeaten run. It's funny how that all works.
Yeah, look, he did actually talk in one of the interviews I saw quoted around that and around the fact that while it was frustrating for him, he understands now that he has a role to play. They've got a lot of developing young talents there at the Wanderers. It took him a while to understand it, but that's pretty big of a guy who's, been an international superstar and played at the top leagues of the game, but he's realising that time, like for all of us, does slowly creep up on us.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's kind of handy to have a World Cup winner to bring off the bench in pivotal moments. And I actually think we did see in the victory game, he came on for the last 20 minutes or so, and he played in some balls that it was just clear that the quality was so good. The attackers weren't used to being on the end of them. They were just a bit slow to get off the mark. Those little kind of 45 dink balls over into the left far post. No one was on the end of them. So maybe a little bit more time for Mata would have had them kind of a little bit of adapted to the quality that he can bring off the bench.
Wait and see whether he extends his deal for another year. There is talk of that. We'd love to see him continuing to do that because if they could figure that out, they could be a real threat next year. But Lockie Avil, as always, if people want more in-depth conversation about all of these wonderful topics, lots of other football, the Avil system, the Avil final system, as JR's calling it, or anything much, much more from the soccer world, Roundball Australia, the website, the podcast, there's plenty coming as we head to this pointy end of the season.
Get us on YouTube as well. We're really close to 1,000 subs at the moment, so that'll be a good milestone to hit.
All right, well, there you've heard it there. If you're liking soccer, you're watching our show, you need to get over and subscribe to the Roundball Australia YouTube channel as well and keep them moving along. Wonderful content, multiple shows every week, so check it out. Big thank you to you, Lockie, and we look forward to talking to you again next week as we creep towards the A-League Grand Final. Well, another big episode in the books, all your black and white sports opinion. No greys here. We certainly dug into some controversy, some thoughts, and we even held ourselves accountable for some absolutely horrific NBA tips earlier in the playoffs. It was great to have a chat with Ben Dunn, Christian Montegan from The First Serve, and Lockie Avil from Roundball Australia, and of course the ever-consistent J.R. Carter, who's continuing to deliver us all the motorsport and a few other bits of insight as well. Some Origin and cricket takes today. He's getting around those sporting landscape alongside us every week, and we love it. We also love you tuning in. Make sure that you do share the show with a sports-loving friend and let us know what you'd like to see on the show and how you think we can improve your viewing experience. In the meantime, you can stay up to date with us on our social media channels. You can find us on Instagram, on X, on Facebook, and on TikTok at The Chris Mack Show. And of course, you can subscribe to us on your favourite podcast platforms, either Spotify. You can come to us here on YouTube. Make sure you subscribe, give us a follow, hit the bell on your favourite platform as well so you get a notification when those new episodes drop. But until next week, enjoy your absolute plethora of sport that's on in this wonderful time of the year. And we look forward to talking all things the black and white of sport, no greys, again next week.